everyone. Welcome to our channel, Automation Rocketship. So here we are back again with the crew, Andy Menon and Pradeep Shukla, for another wonderful episode on UiPath Marketplace Part 3. So Andy's going to walk us through on how to build a simple component and what are the tips and tricks that you need to be aware of. So he's going to give you every single detail on helping you build a new component.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Pradeep. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 3. And in this part, we will be showing you how to go through the process of creating your own component and then publishing it in the marketplace. And what I'm going to show you is a walkthrough of the process that I followed, and also point you to certain important details that you might easily miss if you have not covered the full documentation. And I hope at the end of this session that you will get to know some of the finer points of publishing your own component and becoming a publisher or a contributor to the marketplace. That way, our aim is to make sure that when you try to publish your first component, you have the maximum chances of getting it published on the first attempt, right? So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and go back to my listings in the marketplace, and I'm going to walk you through the process step by step.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this session particularly. I saw one of our viewers actually asked the question regarding a session on Marketplace. So here it is. And after the first two sessions, I believe this is the one that's much in anticipation, and it's going to help everyone
Yep.
be the builder.
Yep. Yeah, I hope that it motivates people to take a shot at becoming a publisher for the first time. So this is my website, rpavanguard.com, and I have a couple of listings here. This is how I started my journey into UiPath Marketplace. And luckily, when UiPath Marketplace was launched, these two listings, uh, were selected and badged with gold certified badging, and that's because they were tested by UiPath and found to be eligible to be used in enterprises, right? So we can talk about the gold and silver badging later. That's at the very end. But uh, the intent here is to show you that these listings, apart from being listed here on the RPA Vanguard channel, you can go directly to the marketplace to the RPA Vanguard page. But I like to go from here because it's easy for me. So what I do is I click on the listing, and that takes me to this page here. This is the RPA Vanguard page. And here you can see 3 listings. And this is the library that we covered in our first 2 sessions. And what I will be doing in this session is showing you how I went through the process of publishing this component, because it is very simple. It has got a small footprint, and the requirements of publishing it are very small, and you really cannot go wrong if you follow all the steps to publish something like this, right? So with that, let's start with your considerations for creating and publishing a component. The primary consideration to publish a component is basically what is it that you're trying to solve, right? What is the problem that you encountered, and what is it that you think that your contribution can solve because you faced a certain problem. Now, you do not really have to face that problem, but you might have an inspiration, an idea from somewhere, which will reinforce the feeling that you can solve a problem by making a component out of it, right? And the second thing you have to consider is come back to the marketplace, look through the listings, and make sure that someone has already not published something. Because if you don't do that and your component gets rejected by UiPath saying that something like this is already existing, then that's a demotivating factor, right? And then it should not look like you are cloning somebody else's idea or a problem that's already been solved, right? So try to take something that becomes representative of yourself, your individual contribution, that is exclusive and has not been done before. right?
Right. And
So
even if you are doing something which is similarly done before,
yeah,
make sure that you have a very unique angle to it, right?
yeah,
You're presenting bringing the solution in an entirely different way than what is already published.
right. I'm going to start with the library project, and I'm going to walk you through how to set up the library project. This is not a session in coding, but this is a session in following some of the guidelines to create and package your project. So I'm back in the UiPath Studio, and this project you're looking at is a library project for prime logging. As you can see, it's called prime logging, and it is a very simple library project. And as we discussed in the previous two episodes of Marketplace, a library is something that does not have a user interface, so its footprint is very small. Now, it does not really matter what the functionality does, because it all depends on what is it that you want to build. And that aside, there are a few things that you must take into consideration here once you build your project and you test your project and you're ready to package it, right? First off, if you're building a project that is user facing, or something that is a front end or a foreground automation process, or something that the user interacts with, take a look at the arguments. And if the user is expected to pass arguments in and get outputs back, then you might want to kind of reconsider the traditional method of passing your arguments to the automation. In this case here, this is a library, so largely this library is used in other UiPath projects, and therefore I have followed the convention of naming the input parameters with the UiPath convention, which is any input parameter must be prefixed with in underscore, and anything as an out parameter should be prefixed with out, so on and so forth. But if you're building something where a user is interacting with your component, then you might want to give proper, parameter names here.
User friendly, yeah, a
Yeah,
user friendly
user-friendly
name so you
parameters,
can
so that
understand. Yeah.
your end users will find it intuitive and easy to use. That's number one.
And just one thing before
Yeah,
we move forward, like
yeah,
taking one step back to what you just said about the library. So if
yeah,
anybody is like building a new library, when we create a brand new project, we would go to that home. Do you just want to
yeah,
quickly?
yeah. It's very, very simple, right? I mean, the library is one of the simplest you can build. You go back to home, and you want to start a project, you just say create a reusable component and you choose the library template, right? And when you do that, you have the same process of naming your library. But please note, always have the name chosen for your library, because that is what people are going to know your component from, right? So name your library intuitively, so that its name is representative of what it does. So once you name your library and your project opens up, um, typically you do all your functional building development in your library project. And then when you're ready to package it, the other thing that you might want to look at is the dependencies, right? Now, when you open a UiPath project, you start a brand new project, you're going to have some default packages or dependencies as part of it. Now, it is not necessary that you retain them unless all of those default dependencies are going to be used in your project. Now, in this case, if you look at the dependencies, I have removed the standard UiPath Excel activities and the standard UiPath Outlook activities. That is because those activities do not form the basis of the functionality of this library, right? Besides, if you are not using those activities, simply packaging them with your project will simply increase the footprint of your project. And whoever is going to add this library to their project are simply going to have a bloated project, right? So
Yeah.
you have to take that into consideration. Now, in this case, I'm not using Excel activities. I'm not using Outlook activities. So I have gone in and deleted those dependencies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We want the packages when you are building it to be minimal in terms of what dependencies and what extensions they may have.
Correct.
It's not just from the size of the assembly,
Correct.
but there are other factors too, like security of that particular package
Correct.
itself. You should
Correct.
not leave objects associated with them or some unnecessary references that you're not going to leverage
Right.
anywhere. That's not the best practice in any way, right? You
Right.
can, it's better to keep them off.
Right.
That way you build a resilient and reliable
Right.
utility that
So
you can consume in your project.
yeah. So the thing that we're all trying to get at is when you're building something, try not to um, build too much redundancy in your components, because you must remember that anybody who's using your component will also have dependencies in their project. So if you're able to not duplicate that effort, you're saving them a lot of problems, and you are keeping your component small. Remember, the smaller your component is, the leaner it is, the number of testing, the number of failures, and the number of future maintenance that you have to do, because you've got that many dependencies in your package, are reduced. Imagine if
Yep.
you have Excel in here, and tomorrow the Excel dependency package changes, and you have to publish your library just because you have used Excel activities in there when it had no business to be there in the first place, right?
Yep.
So try to minimize that and give some thought, because it's not just you who's using it, it's the entire UiPath community and the marketplace that is going to use it, right? So take these into considerations. And the other thing that you might want to do is go to your project settings and just take a look at the kind of project descriptions and things that you have put in here, uh, and add some tags, because one of the things with project tags is it helps to find your packages faster. So try to put some keywords or tags that reflect your functionality, and try to keep a very good description, because now in this case, you see what happened. As I mentioned in the previous two videos, the prime logging library was first published in 2019 or 2020. It was supporting .NET 4. Now, when I published a new version that supports .NET 6, I had to change the description, but I had to inform those who are already familiar with this library that this is going to be the September 2022 replacement, right? I had to tell them so that when they look at the description of the library in the package manager, they immediately know what is the significance of this new release, right? That way people instantly know what its purpose is. And then you can go down here and still retain your original description, um, you know, that will explain to the user what it is doing, but it can be neat, it can be a little organized, so that when they invoke this library package in the package manager, that description comes out a bit neatly. So give that thought, put some thought into it, so that your users will find it very intuitive and very friendly to use.
That's very well said, Andy. I think like this comes back to, like as a user, as a consumer, if I'm looking at it and I'm trying to install, these descriptions are the first things that plays like a
Yep.
very important role in identifying whether this package fits my need or not.
Right.
And so what you said about the packages, that also comes into play, like when you're installing, like let's say I decided, okay, I want this package, I download it and I install it. At that time, I'm installing, and then it gives an agreement box that says like, hey, you will be installing also these dependencies, that says like, you have Outlook, Excel and all that. So when I read the description and then like I see this is for logging, and then I see like Excel and Outlook, then I'll be wondering, is this going to be sending metrics for Excel? So those
Correct.
kind of like thoughts come up. So
Correct.
that's like, it's very, very important,
Yep.
those key pointers that you're mentioning.
Yep. Then always, because you're publishing something of your own exclusivity, your individuality, make sure it represents your identity. And of course, one important thing, please do not use any icons that don't belong to you. Don't copy someone's icons and just put it in there. There are commercial icon builders. You can create your own icons or have someone build them for you, and then upload the package icon. It is possible to do it without the icon, but an icon will represent your component better, and people who already know you will know how to follow or identify your listing, even if they're looking at a long list of components listed in the marketplace, right? And the other thing that I would recommend is do not include the source, right? I'll tell you why when we edit this package in the package manager, right? Do not include the source. And once you have made sure that everything is set, you are ready to build your package, right? Using the standard UiPath package publishing utility, right? So with this concludes, some of the considerations that you have to give when you are building a component. One of the things I would like to first go ahead and come back before I publish is a thought that you have to give to how your library will look in someone else's project, right? So try to create a test project and test your component as a customer, right? Now go from the point of the consumer and try to test your library, right? Now I'm going to show you the relationship between the elements of this library and how it looks in a client project, right? Imagine now I'm playing the role of the client, so I'll be switching over to a client project. Here is what I have done. The first thing is when you come to this project, you open the package manager, right? That is where you actually add the library or the component to your project, right? So I am going to first get to the manage packages.
Mind it, essentially a component is a NuGet package. So you
Right.
can always have a package built locally, and you can,
Yeah.
and when we go to the package manager,
Right.
we can point to the location from where we want to bring this package
Correct.
in the solution, right? So
Correct.
it doesn't have to be published with the orchestrator
Correct.
or the marketplace only that you can
Right.
test. So you can test it locally, validate, and then you can move on from there.
Yep. And that's something that we saw last week, right? I
Last
mean,
week, yeah. In last
how
session
we
we talked
publish it
about,
to our own package store and then consume it from there. We saw that.
right?
Now watch this project. This is a client project, and I'm a client building a project, and I've added the Prime logging library to my package store, right? To this project's package store. Now look at it. The immediate message that I need to communicate to my users is listed here. Now it shows the user what is the purpose of that library, right? It says, hey, this is the September 2022 version, and then followed by what that library does, right? It comes in that piece snippet of text that is very intuitive or very quick for the end user to follow. The second thing is if you click on this component, here you can see that description show up, right? What does the component do in quick bullets so that it keeps it brief, and everything that follows. Here you can see the tags, right? What are the tags that this library belongs to if you want to look for it, right? And then look at the footprint. The dependencies are only 2 instead of everything that you've got, because my client project already has Excel activities, it has mail activities. There is no need for these to be existing within my library, right? So from the client's perspective, you can see why you need to give a thought when you're publishing a component, right? The other thing that you also would want to see is if you go back to the library project, and if I switch to back to the library project, you can see that the name of the component is prime logging, the name of the library project is prime logging, and the method is primed log, right? And where do you see these references? If you switch back to the client project, and if I close this out and then go to my activities browser and then look for primed, here you can see that primed logging is the name of the library and primed log is the method, right? These are the first 2 things that they see, right? Therefore, when you're publishing something, make sure that it is intuitive and reflects what your library or your component is all about. So test the project as a end client so that you get a better perspective on what are the chances of your project or your component being consumed by the marketplace users, right? So now that we have seen the perspective of both the producer and the consumer, let us move on to the action of packaging the library and then creating or altering the package in a way that is acceptable by UiPath.
I think that would be a very fascinating section, because
Yep.
building package and consuming is up to that, because it's still in development
Yep.
phase. Packaging has certain set of instructions that we need to follow so that it's acceptable in the marketplace library.
Correct. Correct. And you're going to see how much of all of this fits together in that tiny little package that you're going to deploy, how everything comes together. And if you give a thought to it, your submission to the marketplace becomes that much easier and that much more pleasant, right? Now, there is nothing earth shattering about how to publish your project. You publish and then you package the project and make sure that you publish it to your local store, because after this, there are steps to follow to alter that package, right? So you have everything that you need, and I'm publishing this to my local store, right? And then I click publish, and provided there are no errors, your package will get published to the local store, right? Now, once you know where you have published this package, the next thing that you have to do, if you have not done this already, is download the Microsoft Package Manager, right? The NuGet Package Manager. Now, this is the GitHub page for NuGet Package Manager, but for Windows users, the GitHub page will recommend that you go to the Microsoft Store to download the uh, NuGet Package Manager, right? And it will lead you to the Microsoft Store, from where you can get the NuGet Package Manager. Please download it and install it. It will install itself like a normal application on your machine,
Mhm.
and it will be available in your on your Windows machine. So if I go to start here, if I go to NuGet, here is the NuGet Package Explorer, right? So this is a simple utility that helps you compose your packages or modify your existing packages before you can publish them, right? Now, there is a very interesting page that many folks will not know about. And if you scroll this GitHub page, it will lead you to this page here. It is called NuGet Spec. And what the NuGet Spec does is publish the latest specification of NuGet packages, right? It shows you what you need to do to submit, to build and submit your NuGet packages. Now remember, this page is designed for people who will create the package from the ground up. But with UiPath, a lot of that pain has been taken away, because when you hit publish, what is actually happening is almost 60 to 70% of the process that is required for you to build the package. And UiPath takes care of that and builds that package for you. But that is okay if you are not going to use that package to publish it in the public domain, like a marketplace. If you have to send it out to public domain, then you have to abide by certain rules, right? And to do that, you have to modify the package that you just generated with UiPath using UiPath Publish utility using the NuGet Package Explorer, right? Now I'm going to show you two views of NuGet Package Explorer. There is one package that I'm using for civilian use, my own personal use, and the other one that has been published to the UiPath Marketplace. And I can show you the difference, and then you will see the steps that you have to take to make your package eligible to be submitted into public domain. Okay. If I say file and say open, right, I can open a package. So when I say open, you can navigate to or browse to the path where your package is located, and you can open that package, right? Because it opens everything that is got the .nupkg extension, right? So when you open up the package, it will open up as seen here, right? Notice that everything that I added in my project, wherever possible, the NuGet Package Manager has taken that automatically and mapped it, right? Now, this is the package, which is version 2.1.5, which you will find in the marketplace, right? Now, I'm going to open another package, which was version 2.0, which is the older version, which has not been published to UiPath Marketplace. And we can look at the differences side by side. And then we can look at the steps that you require. to make your package eligible to be published to UiPath Marketplace. So if I go to the second NuGet Package Manager window, here is the package manager. You can see that this is version 2.0.1. And here on the right, it is pretty evident that there is a lot more content or assets in the package than there is in the package that has been submitted to the marketplace, right? So this is where your first modification comes from. The first thing that you have to do to your package is you back up your package that you built using UiPath Package Manager utility. The reason I'm saying that is you might go wrong somewhere and you might want to restore your package, right? So when you open up the package, the first thing you got to do is delete the content library or the content folder, sorry. Delete the entire content folder. So you right click and you delete the content folder. Now, the reason is because you don't need to share your code necessarily with the consumers of your marketplace, right? And UiPath will ask you to remove it if you publish it this way. It is going to be rejected, and they're going to ask you to remove this folder. And most importantly, they are going to ask you to remove project.json, right? Remember, the project.json is for your studio. It is not for your component, right? So your entire content folder needs to be removed. That's number one.
It's a final fine-tuned executable, right? In the
Correct.
end. So you don't
Correct.
want any of your configuration files, code files, project.json, other things we don't want, because
correct.
again,
Correct.
when you're publishing a component, it's an IP for your it's your component, right?
Right.
It's your IP that you're publishing. So definitely you don't want to leave options out there that it can be recoded or changed or updated with some
Right.
other intent or purposes, right?
Correct. So once you have done that, now we shift our focus to the left, right? This is where you got to be very, very careful and follow the rules. Okay.
So is there a difference, Andy, between these two versions? Why you see on the right side is not editable, but here you see the editable version in 2.0.1?
No, that's because I have not clicked the edit button. This is already
Oh,
published, so I don't feel a reason
okay.
to edit it, right? If
All
you
right.
want to
Yep.
edit this, you click on this, it goes into edit mode. Now I'm going to show you the edit metadata on the left because this is the official version that I've published. And it is important for you to know what is it that you need to put in your package, right? So on the right, you see this is the XML version of your package. But if you come back to your original view, it's a lot easier to edit it this way, right? First off, the good news is you don't have to put in all of this. If you have already put in most of the descriptions and stuff correctly, the name of your library, the version, everything, that's all fine. But some of the things you have to remember is that the fields that you have to populate will change with the NU spec or the new spec document that you have. For example, if you go back to the new spec page here, you can see some of the things that they show you. License URL is deprecated or owners is deprecated. Instead of owners, use authors. So if I go back to this package manager, both versions, you can see that I have populated authors instead of owners because owners is deprecated. I have to use authors. So if there are multiple authors, you have to separate them out and put them in the same line. The next thing you have to do is very important. If your project has a URL where this project has been put on the internet with a URL, then you populate your project URL, your repository. What is your repository URL? And this is usually where, if there is a large scale project that's done by multiple people shared in places like Git, right? So those are the kind of things that you put in here. But what is very, very important is you have to select requires license acceptance. If you don't do this, your package changes will not be saved and UiPath will not accept your marketplace contribution. You have to select it. It's easy to forget. I have forgotten it twice, right? So please remember, it is very, very important that you check this. And not only you check this, you have to give the license URL. It is required. Your package manager accepts a license URL as soon as you say, I'm going to accept the licensing terms, right? And that is where the talk of licensing comes, right? And you have to understand, or at least give it a thought about what license that you want to publish this component under, right? So when I say requires license acceptance, you have to populate this field. So here you can see when I say license acceptance has been said yes, and if I go to edit, I have actually put in the URL of the open source initiative 3-clause BST license. So I personally find that the BST license is easy for me to follow and understand. BST stands for Berkeley Software Distribution Licensing Schema, and it is part of the open source initiative where software developers can share their work on the open internet for use by others. So there are a few licenses, and I can go through them quickly one by one, and then I can give you the highlights of the licenses, and then you can go and do your own research, and then think about which license that you would want to share your work with, right? Now, this is only for open source sharing. If you are sharing something as an open source contributor and sharing your work to the open internet, the licenses I'm discussing with you will apply.